So, hopefully, for the last time, here I am talking to you about cancer one more time. It's the third time, actually. But there you go. And well, it's 2 months after the operation. I'm alive and kicking. I've lost 10, 11 kilos. I don't know what that is in real money because I was brought up with stones and ounces, so utterly meaningless to me. But I guess it's a chunk of weight, and yeah, so there you go. And I'm very well. I never did say actually in these videos how I came to find out about this thing. Or at least I don't think I did. It was really weird. I was playing with my grandchildren, Florence and Paloma, in a swimming pool, and chucking them around, I guess, but as grandfathers are supposed to do, and generally having a great time. But then I stupidly developed a kind of hernia in just above my belly button, and so I went and saw a doctor. They sent me to a hospital, and they stuck a tube down my throat and with a camera on it, which is not the nicest thing I have to say, but anyway. And they said just to check on the, to do a sort of check from the inside, nothing was wrong there, and they were going to leave this hernia. They said, you just live with it. It's one of those things. And then they said, but there's something else going on down there. And so this led to the discovery of this thing. So if I hadn't been playing with my grandchildren in the swimming pool, this would have gone a lot further, and it wouldn't have been discovered so early, and I would have fallen off my little perch. So it was very good, actually. A couple of tumors, and they chopped me across the middle and hoiked them out and hoiked off of everything else out at the same time, which was not ideal, which means it takes a hell of a long time to recover. I mean, I'm recovered, but I can't drive a car yet because you have to be fit enough to do an emergency stop, don't you? And it takes a while for once they've sliced you up right across the tummy. It takes a while for those muscles to heal. Now that no big deal. It's just life, and I'm as lucky as hell that this worked that way and that this was all discovered. But one of the things I was saying to you when I was first diagnosed with cancer was that it changed your priorities. Getting under the knife in hospital, and you're in the hospital for a chunk of time. I mean, I was in for nearly 2 weeks, and that's years gone by. Of course, it used to be much longer. Even quite comparatively recently, people would be in for a month or whatever for this kind of operation, but now it's cut back. Nonetheless, I was in for a chunk of time, and you are in some discomfort initially, and it makes you think. And I said priorities changed. Priorities changed again for me when I was in hospital. It was strange because I was in a kind of bucket list situation before I went into hospital, thinking, well, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this. When you get in hospital, all you want is just to be home gently. I mean, and that's common to so many people, so many situations. Just to be home, just to be quiet, just to be peaceful. Extraordinary. I had a dream. You have the most vivid dreams because the drugs they slap you on. I mean, I had dreams of Armageddon, all sorts of things. Some friends of mine who've been in this situation have had quite horrible nightmares. Mine weren't really nightmares. They were extraordinary, some of them. But one of the more charming ones, I was wandering around. And these are vivid, like because of the drugs. You're on really, really heavy drugs. This is psychedelic stuff. You are living these dreams, and so I was walking in a wood with my wife, and we had nowhere to stay, and I was telling Jaffa, my friend, this dream. And I had tears in my eyes because we had nowhere to stay, and I found a little hollow in the ground, and there was some straw, and I grabbed this bit of straw and laid it in the hollow. It was cold, and I had a blanket, and I lay my wife down, and then I snuggled in beside her, and I pulled the blanket across the two of us, And I was really happy. That was all I needed. And the extraordinary thing about this, Jaffa was very upset. He said, no, these dreams, because I had tears in my eyes. I was telling him this because you get very emotional after being sliced up. And Jaffa was saying, oh, no, it's not going to be like that. You dream something in the Middle East, it means the opposite, you're going to be fine. But I then had a job and a half trying to explain to Jaffa that this was a happy dream, that this was a wonderful dream, that I felt really content. That's all I needed. And it was a really lovely moment. Anyway, I'm going on, but I said my priorities change. What else did I want to say to you? I mean, there is this thing about cancer staying with you. And this is for all cancer patients. It doesn't go away just because you've been sliced up and had a couple of tumors come out. So you have to be aware of that if you're talking to someone who's had cancer. It's with you forever because people have relapses. They have to monitor you. People are on chemo. I'm on chemo. God, blooming heck. I mean, I was whacking great injection every month, and then you have to have drugs to deal with the side effects of the chemo that's dealing with the... Anyway, So I have another set of drugs to deal with the chemo, which causes problems in itself, which is supposed to help you. But, Anyway, so many cancer survivors actually go through that, and it's one of those things you have. But, God, grateful to be alive. I mean, we all walk on ice through life, don't we? You could be hit by a bus tomorrow. We always say that. But, I mean, you really could be hit by a bus tomorrow. You really could suddenly have some catastrophe and you'd fall over and drop down dead. And it happens to everybody. There's that risk. And just because you've got cancer, it doesn't make any difference. But we are lucky. Let me say that we are blooming lucky in Britain and in northwestern Europe, countries like France. The same doesn't apply in Spain or many South European countries. But I was being nursed by people from the Philippines in the hospital I was in, which is King's, and they who specialize in this kind of cancer. And these Filipinos said there was a lovely guy, Filipino nurse looking after me, a male nurse looking after me at night, and he was saying, back home, he'd worked in hospitals back home in the Philippines before he came to the UK, and my goodness, somebody in my situation, they just pat them on the head and say, go home and good luck, because there would be no way that they could operate, because the cost would be so immense. Even the cost of the drugs were immense. He was telling me of a friend of his who had his mother needed treatment. He came to the hospital and they couldn't. I mean, it's not the hospital's fault. The hospital was broke. And they said, no, you have to go home and bring the drugs. You have to. But he didn't have the money. He said, can't you treat my mama because she'll die? And they said, no, we can't. We haven't got the money ourselves. So, but he said, just treat her while I go home and sell some land so that I can. And no, they wouldn't because they couldn't. And so his mother died. I mean, that's the Philippines. But many, many countries of the world, including developed countries, don't have the kind of free healthcare that we have in this country. Sure, Britain, France, Scandinavia, Germany, but many European countries don't, and many, many, many countries in the world at large don't. In fact, the vast bulk of them. So we live lucky here with our healthcare. What else was I going to say? Well, the random nature of this whole blooming thing, that's self-evident, but I was in a small ward with four of us in there. And there was a boy the next bed to me, 19 years old. Same sort of thing as me, but he'd been chopped up before. He'd had lung cancer early, they'd chopped a bit of his lung, and now he was back for the kind of surgery that I was undergoing, and he was crying with his mother. I mean, goodness sake. He was 19, and then across the road from me, the bed opposite, a lovely man, the sweetest man you can imagine, with the sweetest family. He was 72, so a few years older than me, but not that much. God, we all move on in age. And he, opposite me, he'd been in. They'd sliced him up, and his pancreas was shot with cancer when they got in there, and so they just stitched him up again without doing anything. And so he'd gone through all the trauma that I and others had had, and they'd done nothing. And I was sitting there, and the doctor came along to this guy, and he said, "I'm sorry, we couldn't." I mean, I was there with him, and he said, "I'm sorry, we couldn't remove the tumor. There was too much. It had gone too far." So we had to close you up. And the guy said, "So how long have I got, doctor?" And he said, "Well, not very long." He said, "Well, how many years?" And the doctor said, "No, it's a question of how many months. You have about 2 months." And this dear man, I mean, he dealt with it stoically, actually, amazingly, courageously, without blinking an eye. And I suppose people do. You just go on putting one foot in front of the other. Astonishingly. Anyway, but there you go. I mean, so it is what it is, these things. What else did I want to say? Not much. We're nearly there. Well, yes. Life is random. Everything in life is random. And that's, well, no, it isn't. There is, it is and it isn't, isn't it? I mean, these challenges are seemingly random, but many of the decisions you have to make are yours. You have your own choices. And that's, I think, one of the things I've resolved to do. I've resolved many times to be more driven by that still small voice inside you, you know? And you can call it God, or you can call it your conscience, or you can call it whatever you like. It doesn't matter. You can be an atheist and still have a still small voice inside you, that sense of that moral compass that is almost like a alter ego. And it's great. And we ignore it at our cost, because it really can be a form of guidance. And I found at times that you need to reflect quietly, and then you can get a bearing on the day ahead. It's great. And you do that in hospital? Well, no, you don't. But then the whole time you're strapped in bed, you're, I suppose, reflecting. But I mean, you're in some dark place for much of it, so you don't really think. But when you come out, it gives you that thought that really you need to reflect a little more on life and on the actions. I mean, we come this way but once, and we are all conscious of it, but I guess you become more conscious of it. And so I will try and be more reflective and live a little more by my conscience, not care as much about what others think, but try and do what is right, which I guess is what all of us can do. I've said enough. That I just wanted to come back and let you know I was still rocking and rolling here. And thank you for all of you that have been kind and supportive. God bless you all.